Hey everyone, welcome back to another Safari Ltd review. Today we're taking a look at one of their newest releases. It's their 2020 Deinonychus. This figure is definitely one of my most anticipated figures for the entire year. I've been waiting a long time for a company to do a nice sized, fully feathered Deinonychus figure, and Safari definitely delivered. Actually, this was my number one prediction in my Safari 2020 Wish Want List video, and I am so happy I guessed right because I've been just dying for a figure like this for a long time. And you can tell I'm excited because I went down to the basement and dug out some of my Deinonychus fossil replicas. In the back right here, we have a full-size cast of an adult Deinonychus, and right here we have a cast of that terrible claw, which Deinonychus is named after. But we'll take a little closer look at those casts a little later in the review, so let's just zoom in a little bit and take a look at this Deinonychus. And here's a closer look at this beautiful looking Deinonychus. This is a very well sculpted, well painted figure, and Deinonychus is such an important dinosaur. When John Ostrom released his study on this animal in 1969, it totally revolutionized what we thought of dinosaurs. Before this animal was discovered, it was generally thought that dinosaurs were cold-blooded, slow-moving animals, and then all of a sudden this very swift and agile-looking predator is discovered. And this was started the whole debate where dinosaurs warm-blooded or cold-blooded, also that they could possibly be related to birds. And now we know that most of this is true. Dinosaurs are warm-blooded and birds are descended from dinosaurs. So before we take a closer look at this figure, let's do a couple of quick measurements. This figure is about 9 inches long from the tip of the snout to the tip of that very feathered tail, and about 3.5 inches tall. So Deinonychus was about 11 feet long. That would put this figure somewhere in the 1/15 scale range. The pose on this figure is fairly simple. Both arms are tucked to the side of the body, and the tail droops down slightly just to help with stability. This figure is a tripod, and the head is just tilted to the side like the Deinonychus is just scanning its surroundings looking for potential prey, and the mouth is sculpted shut, which is fine by me. I don't need every single one of my dinosaur figures with their mouths sculpted open like they're always screaming, so this is a very nice pose. I do like it a lot. So let's zoom in and take a look at some of the finer details on the figure, starting with that head sculpt. You can see the front of the face right here is sculpted in scales. This is the only part on the body besides the feet where scales are visible on this figure. And you can see those scales are nicely sculpted. The mouth is nicely defined. The nostrils are right here. And the eyes are painted in red with a black pupil. I love red for eyes on dinosaurs. I think it looks just so cool. And the main body coloration is this dark brown color highlighted by this lighter brown. Now my figure does have a couple paint blemishes. There's one right here on the tail, and then turn the figure around right here on the other side. You can see some paint chipping above the eye and some rubbing right here, and even along the arm right here there is some paint rubbed off. It's not a big deal to me because I do repaint my figures and I can easily touch this up, but it is a little bit disappointing that the figure came slightly damaged. Now going back to the head, you can see there is a black stripe behind the eye right here, and you have some of that white coloring coming through. And then turn the figure over. The whole bottom of this figure is painted in a white color. I kind of wish there was a little bit of a darker wash underneath this white part right here to really bring out all that beautiful feather detail on here. But from the side, this figure does look very nice. Now the head on this Deinonychus, Doug Watson sculpted this figure. Doug does excellent job on the Safari figures he works on. This has the new head reconstruction. Deinonychus before, I'll go back and show off the skull cast in a moment. Now this figure is sculpted in with the longer lower skull reconstruction. Now if you look at my cast right here, you can see it's more of a higher skull, almost like triangle shape. This was the original reconstruction by John Ostrom, but more material has been found, and it's been discovered that Deinonychus had a much longer and lower skull, and that is reflected on this model right here. And now getting back to the rest of this figure, you can see it has a very dense and fluffy coat of feathers on it. Like even like the neck is very fluffy looking. This whole figure actually looks like kind of adorable, even though this is a very dangerous predatory dinosaur. But I do absolutely love the look of this figure. Going down to the arms right here, you can see all those secondary and primary feathers are beautifully sculpted. You've got a light brown coloration right here with a little bit of that dark brown wash over it to bring out more of that feather detail. The feathers right here are outlined in white and black. And then going down to the feet right here, you can see the feet are the only other parts on this figure that actually have scale detail. You get some more light brown along the calves right here, and you can see the trademark terrible claw is sculpted in nicely, and it is not, it's a little bit sharp if you push your finger up against it, which I am glad Safari didn't dull the claw out. I know they usually do that in some of their models because, you know, these figures are also meant for kids, but I am glad that they kept the shape and sharpness of this claw intact. And speaking of the claw, here is my fossil replica of the terrible claw. I actually got this at the Peabody Museum, where the original holotype material of Deinonychus is housed, and I've got to see their 2 skeletons on display. And right now the Peabody Hall is under a major renovation, and it won't be open for the next 3 years, but I will definitely be there, and I can't wait to see if they actually repose their Deinonychus skeletons, so you can see just how sharp the claw is. It was actually a lot bigger in real life. There was a keratin sheet that covered this claw, so it was definitely a lot bigger than this. And getting back to the feet, it seems like this foot right here got warped a little bit in the tray it was inserted in, so when you place the figure down, let me see if I can capture that. You can see the toe is just off the ground a little bit. I'm gonna have to use some hot and cold method to reshape that, but other than that, the figure does stand really, really well, even with that warping on the foot right here. And then flipping it over, you can see the hand claws are sculpted in right here, and the arms are at rest along the side of the body. And then going down to the tail, you can see there's a beautiful, beautiful plumage of feathers that are beautifully sculpted all the way down to the tip of the tail. This is very similar to the Safari, I think it was the 2017 Velociraptor. The tail is very, very similar. Look at all that beautiful sculpted feathers along here. And like I said earlier, I kind of just wish there was a little bit of a darker wash over these white feathers to really bring out all of that beautiful detail. But this is a beautiful, beautiful looking Deinonychus. I absolutely love the look of this figure. I'm so happy that we finally got a nice looking Deinonychus model. Alright, let's move on with some comparisons. Here are some other Deinonychus figures. In the back right here is the old Resaurus Carnage Collection Deinonychus, and in the front right here is the Reborn Deinonychus. And you can see on this Resaurus figure that it has the old head reconstruction, and it really shows the difference between the old head reconstruction and the new one on the Safari Deinonychus. I still absolutely love this old Resaurus figure. It's just such a retro look to it. And then right here is the Reborn Deinonychus, which is a nice figure, but I definitely like the more fluffier feathered look on the Safari one. Even though this figure is feathered, it just looks like it's just a very skinny animal with a very thin layer of feathers. I definitely prefer this much more fluffier looking look. And here it is with the Safari Ltd feathered Velociraptor. Now these 2 figures are not in scale because, as most of you know, Velociraptor is a lot smaller than Deinonychus, but it is nice to have 2 well sculpted dromaeosaur figures displayed next to each other. And here it is with the Walking with Dinosaur Utahraptor. Now that I finally got my wish and we have a nicely sculpted feathered Deinonychus, I would love to see some of the larger dromaeosaurids get the feather treatment like Utahraptor and Dakotaraptor. And here it is with one of the Beast of the Mesozoic figures there, Dromaeosaurus. I would absolutely love it if someday David Silva went back and gave us some of the larger raptors to scale with these smaller 1/6 scale figures. I think a large articulated feathered Deinonychus would be absolutely insane. I literally don't know what I'd do with myself if that actually ever happened. And here it is with some of Safari's other 2020 dinosaurs. They're Edmontosaurus and Pachycephalosaurus. I already did the review on this excellent Edmontosaurus, and I'll be getting to this Pachycephalosaurus review relatively shortly. So, final thoughts on this figure. Obviously, I am ecstatic that we finally have a nice feathered Deinonychus figure. This is a really great figure. There was one thing I forgot to point out early in the review. When I look at the placement of the eye, it just looks like it's a hair too far back. I mean, it's kind of tough to tell where the skull and the neck ends on this figure because of all the feathering on here. It's not like, you know, the other dinosaur models that we're used to, where they're kind of shrink wrapped. You could kind of tell where the skull and neck begin. So maybe just because of all that feathering, it just makes the eye look a little too far back to me. But other than that, that's like my only nitpick on this figure. I like the pose on it. I love all the detail. The coloration is fantastic. You know, the only other tiny gripe I have is just maybe a little bit of a darker wash over that white to bring out all that beautiful sculpting detail. But other than that, yeah, I highly recommend this figure. It's great. We know where every company does a million Velociraptors because of Jurassic Park, and I'm just happy that my boy Deinonychus here is finally getting some love, and this is a fantastic looking figure. I ended up picking this figure up directly from Safari. It retails for $13.99, and I'll leave a link in the description if you want to pick up this figure for yourself. And that will pretty much do it for the review. I just have the Pachycephalosaurus to do, and then whenever Safari releases some of the other 2020 figures, I'll be picking those up, so expect reviews on some of those figures. And remember, if you're liking the content on this channel, show your support by hitting that subscription button just below the video. Each subscription helps out the channel tremendously, and it's greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys for the next one.